Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Shari Foos, founder of the Narrative Method. Welcome, Shari. So excited to talk to you about food, community, and that intersection that is so important.
Absolutely. I'm excited too. And as we were talking before we began, I think that intersection is nourishment. And what does it mean to be truly nourished?
Uh, I think that's a great question to start with. So, what does it mean to be truly nourished?
So we know that we need food and water and exercise and all those things that we know. But the more scientists have studied and neurologists have studied the brain and what happens to our biology and our sense of self when we don't have meaningful connections, we've come to understand that relationships, both one on one and in groups, are really also imperative to thriving. We know it's a common statistic that men often pass away when their wives had because they're so dependent on that relationship. But all of us suffer, as we know from the pandemic. It's not good enough just to have contact with people through the internet or occasionally. So it's part of the food of life for me.
We always need our people,
Yeah.
whether it is for support or resources or just that human connection. That's really, really important. But you don't just talk about how important it is, you actually do things that bring people together. And I'm not quite sure where to start, but this is a food podcast. So let's talk about your library dinners. So, what
Okay.
are they and how did they come about?
Well, the narrative method has different programs. We offer free salons 5 days a week online, thenarrativemethod.org. You can sign up. We also do interviews with interesting people. We just had Steve Gutenberg last night. And we do work with universities, underserved communities, and special events. So, one of the special events we offer is called the Library Dinner, and it can happen at a library or a public space or someone's home. But the idea is everyone meets at this space and goes away for 1 hour and learns something, anything. You could be interested in, a bug on the ground or pull a fascinating book. And based on what you've learned during that hour, everyone has a lovely dinner and goes around and shares what they've learned. And just that, because no one could have predicted it, because no one could have known where each person's interest followed, it is a fascinating experience of just changing what seems to be impromptu knowledge and information. So it's really fun and it's a great way for people to get to know each other on a whole other level.
So many questions, but the one that sticks out is what is the most interesting thing you've ever learned at one of these events?
Wow. Well, I once spent my time talking to a janitor in the hallway. It was just something that happened organically, and it was a wonderful exchange because for me, nothing makes me more excited than dealing with really diverse people who I wouldn't have gotten to meet otherwise, both for the fascination of just the miraculousness of meeting someone you would not have, but also because we're breaking all of those fears that we're told that, the other is dangerous or you don't have in common with this person or that. When we come from who we really are, without small talk, just go to the big talk. What's going on with you? That bonding, especially because it's with a stranger, is really kind of a holy experience. You may never see them again, but to get to have a touch with someone like that, it's wonderful.
I'm just surprised it took us so long to meet because everything you're saying, they're truly core of what I believe in because you
Well,
never know who you're going to run into, who you're going to strike up a conversation with. And it's beautiful when you can just bring more different interesting people into your life because isn't that what life is about? The other thing, of course, is to take your values, what's important to you, and share what it is you love with others to make the world a better place. Where do you think that all came from for you?
Um, well, there were different parts, but I guess the earliest part was I didn't have a good childhood. My father was violent, and so I had to learn adaptive tools. And I think I was always naturally funny, but I also discovered that if I could make him laugh, he might not blow. And in addition to discovering the amazing tool of humor, I also learned to read body language, which is really key to my work in the narrative method. And I have a background in psychology. And when you are looking and taking in what people are communicating nonverbally, first of all, you always have to check in to make sure that you're getting it right. But what we feel in those subtle, nuanced communiques is so profound. And that opportunity to really sense through not your intellect so much, but through your person, through your humanity, where someone is at. So in this case, for me, if he had sweat on his upper lip, he was probably about to blow. And that would be a good time to make a joke.
Wow, you had an education early on that, but if you think about the gift that it's allowed you to
Absolutely.
give so many other people, it's just mind-blowing, right?
Absolutely.
Where does the food piece come in?
Well, I'm Jewish. I would say first and second, it would be that. I have been, not to brag, but a really, really good eater throughout my life. But because of the work that I have done, I really have had to make some choices because I'm not somebody with, you know, 24/7 energy bunny. So one of the things I traded in terms of things that I developed was cooking myself. And it's partly because it hurts my back to stand up. But I love eating. I love what meals do. So I have hosted zillions of dinners where either people pitch in or, we order something in, but for the purpose of just sitting with people and having one conversation, which is a rare opportunity, oftentimes, especially at events where people aren't introduced to each other and they feel awkward. So that's really why I started to create prompts that would just take people quickly and instantly into a deeper connection.
And are some of these prompts specifically food related? Because I feel like that's something almost anybody could about at the drop of a hat.
Let me just say that I have our first project. I would love to do that. I haven't done food related prompts. That's brilliant. When you think of those memories and those smells, every once in a while, I have smelled something that took me back to my grandmother, like her stuffed cabbage, that certain kind of combination of that tomato sauce and raisins and cinnamon. And wow, how that impacts me.
I love that you just answered the next question I was going to ask you, which is what is your earliest food memory? Is that it? Or is there another one?
Um, I had so many associated with my grandmother, who's such a beautiful cook and baker. And I would stand by her and ask her to help me do it. And well, how much salt? Just a pinch. Well, how much is that? Just a little bit. And so all of that cooking by feel, I think I've adopted that in my way of being in the world, which is living by relating to people by what feels true.
And I know you've got a recipe that you want to share
I
that's
do.
also meaningful to you. So please, without even more ado than that, what
Okay.
is the recipe and why this recipe?
So this is a recipe that was created in 2001 by my son and his cousin. They were 6 and 7, respectively. And what I love about this recipe is not only that it's really good, and it's definitely not exact, but it is so engaging in a way that only a child could imagine. Shall I share it with you?
Go for it.
Okay. So this was by Henry and Zach Foos, June 23rd, 2001. First bowl, mix applesauce with melted butter, add brown sugar and cinnamon. This is cinnamon surprise cake. Second bowl, make icing by mixing melted butter and powdered sugar. And then these three items, there's no qualification, just challah, chocolate chips, cherries. Put contents of first bowl in holes in challah. Cover with tinfoil to prevent toasting. Bake at 400 degrees for 2 games of Pac-Man and 6 hand clapping games. When out of the oven, ice the sides and serve hot with whipped cream.
First of all, delicious. Second of all, I, my other me, as I said in the intro, is goal strategist. So I'm all about cooking for productivity. And this to me sounds like cooking for productivity and fun. So that having an activity or activities to do while the food is cooking, but the fact that it's a recipe that they created together and made together and then have fun together. I think we get so serious all the time. I don't think the power of fun can there I don't think we could ever have too much fun in the kitchen.
Agreed. Oh my gosh. I mean, if we're not have life's too hard, we have to have fun, laughter, fun. It's but what I also love is that the time is based on 2 games of Pac-Man and 6 hand clapping games. What a fascinating look into the way a child's mind is starting to integrate big scientific ideas. I just love that part.
It is a beautiful recipe, and I am so thrilled that you shared that. What else do you think? What other parts of this food conversation? I'm going to ask a better question. What are other things people can do to connect with people through conversation?
Absolutely. Well, one thing is, yes, we do have card decks. And the thing about them is they are designed to get you very quickly into a real conversation. It's not what's your favorite color or anything like that. They just go right to the quick. Like, when could you not help but laugh your ass off? Or, questions that deal with really profound issues as well as funny issues. And the thing is, when you're meeting someone, even when you know someone well, with families, they don't always know each other's stories. Like parents don't, thank God, know all the things that kids did when they were in their adolescence. But when you learn about them later, when you know they're in good shape now, it is incredible to get an inner look at the child during ages when you would not have really been privy to as much stuff as you were when they were younger. So whether it's family or somebody in line in front of you at a coffee shop or the supermarket or a public place, to be entitled, to entitle yourself, as long as you're approaching a person with love and as long as you're not asking them to open up for you without your sharing something first. I mean, I'm just looking at you right now, and I would of course want to know what does cooking mean to you. Maybe somebody's in line at the supermarket in front of you, and some product that they've bought evokes a question in you. And so just using what's real in the moment with what really gets evoked is always going to be an organic conversation.
The grocery store, that was always my thing. When I was a kid, I would ride my bicycle to the grocery, do the shopping, and get a
Oh,
call. I'd call home for the groceries to get picked up, because for me that was fun. And in high school, my friends weren't there. It was a social thing. I think I even wrote a story called "How I Found Peas and Quiet in Aisle 6 or Aisle
oh
8"
my
or
God, I
whatever it
love that.
was. But it for me that before I found the love of cooking, I always had that love of shopping. And you reminded me, and this was a few years ago. I was in line and I asked this woman about this unique soda or drink she was buying. And she said, "Oh, it's great. Try one." And she took one out of her cart and gave it to me to take home and try it. And I don't think people approach other people with that kind of kindness so much anymore.
And
So
how great is that moment? How great is it?
it's, well, talk about food memories and grocery memories. I don't know where that came from, but it was definitely within this conversation of the love and the connection that you can have at grocery stores. You can't really fake being genuine and real and approachable. By the same token, we live in a world where everybody is totally on guard. So,
Yeah.
how do you recommend people and I don't want to say lighten up because that feels like it's downgrading, but what's your recommendation? How can people be more open to their surroundings and have less tunnel vision?
I think the first thing is when you're connected with yourself, it's much easier to connect with other people. So if you are responding again to something that's really happening, like you see somebody fumbling for her keys and her phone and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you may not want to bother them right then, but maybe when they find their stuff, you say, "Do you believe all this stuff we have to keep track of?" Because anybody can relate to that. Something that is real for these times or this moment, as long as it's not probing or in some way potentially offensive, I would really obviously avoid things like that, things like politics, things that are divisive. But at our core, we want to be accompanied in the small aggravations of life, and we can really bond over those.
Great example because we've all been there for sure.
Yeah.
What are what are some other things that I guess the givers, what are other ways people can create little communities like you've created your own?
For sure. Well, I really recommend people either doing it online the way we do or in person and invite a few friends. And you can use our cards or you can use something else. But find something that is uh, interesting without being too complicated so that it gives everyone a chance to go around and share. For example, you might take a great quote that you find inspiring. And what we do in our groups is we'll say, okay, go around the group and say your first name and introduce yourself by responding to this quote, as opposed to I grew up here and I'm this old and blah 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 and that's my job. Tell us something real about you. So if the quote has something to do with, let's say loving your neighbor, um, it's more likely that the person will really think more deeply about what that means to them. It may surprise you by being incredibly profound, incredibly flip, or it might make them cry. But to just give people space and to witness them, especially while they're talking, don't jump in on them, don't finish their sentence, don't know anything. Just be in a state of wonder, because the thing that's so cool about zillions of people is that they are unpredictable to us. And before we judge that, well, I really wouldn't want to be friends with that one, and I really don't relate to this one, that all may be true. But in the course of minutes, in a real life situation, you can really love somebody. Like the woman who gave you a can of soda. I mean, that just felt so good. And then we pass it on.
I think paying it forward and paying kindness forward, I think that's one of the most profound ways we can live now, especially because of all the crazy in the
Of
world, for
course.
sure. In what way do you think, though, that food and cooking enhances conversation?
Well, first of all, people are having erotic experiences together. If you're eating and you're enjoying it, you're not guarded. So, maybe the food drops out of your mouth or, little things happen that are just real life, as opposed to if you're in a meeting and you're buttoned up and you're sort of following the suggested script. I think enjoying beautiful food and appreciating the cultures they came from. The chef, what did this person go through to create this meal? And how did they happen to bring these people together? All of that, I think, it's kind of a magic and a gift of being introduced to an experience. We have far too experiences in the world right now, but an experience of your senses, an experience of enjoying your senses with other people. Again, even with strangers, it's such a thrill.
And there is so much power to eating in real life, but there's no reason you can't have virtual dinner parties. Just because
Oh
they didn't
yeah,
exist before the pandemic does not mean you can't use that to bring people together, which is honestly bringing people who don't know each other together is one of my favorite things. I do another show called Goal Chat, and unless it's on purpose, I bring together a panel of three on a topic, and they haven't met each other. Every now and then I get two people who I didn't realize knew each other, but the whole point of the conversation is to explore and converse. And
I love that.
it's so much fun.
It's
So
so much fun.
I'm definitely gonna have to have you on one of those conversations.
Oh,
We'll turn
for sure.
the
And
table on you a
let's have
little
a
more.
Zoom dinner. I mean,
Oh,
the
let's
thing that's so good is you don't have to eat anything you don't want. I mean, I just love that.
what are your tips then for planning a Zoom dinner?
Okay, well, what I would say to people is feel free to have at least have something nice to drink, not necessarily alcohol, because for me, if we're connecting in a deeper way, I'd rather everybody be fully there. But to be able to have your own food, cook the way you like it, whether you want to eat it sort of more privately or as you're speaking with your mouth open, whatever. But to be able to have a conversation as you would, you may share about what you're eating or not. You may just, by the way, we're also having dinner together. But I wouldn't I don't like to approach stuff like that with too many rules because you don't know what cool stuff other people are going to come up with.
Well, it is great that to share a meal where everybody's preparing their meal, but you're still having that experience.
Yeah,
And that I think really does transcend location.
for sure. I also think would be really fun to have everybody get food delivered, hopefully, if they're, geographically close enough from the same place. Or if they're not, let's say everybody get your favorite pizza. And when we come on, you're all going to describe your pizza or whatever kind of item is fun to compare. It could be with an ethnic theme. I mean, it's endless, but the point is to have the nurturance of company while you're having the joy of great food and the nurturance that food and drink in great company provides. It's just delightful.
Agreed that there's nothing like it. This has been so much fun, and I know that you and I could talk all day. Do you have any final food for thought before we wrap?
Food for thought, I would say, in terms of the food that I know about, um, when it comes to feelings of loneliness or trepidation about reaching outside of your circle, um, invite yourself to think deeply with yourself, to have a creative conversation with yourself. That it may be an exercise of creative writing or journaling, but really get clear on something that matters to you. And then when you bring that very subject to someone else, like, what do you think about that? I've been kind of going crazy with this, or I've been wondering about this or that. And particularly if it's a cultural thing that everyone can relate to, it can really lead to rich conversations.
I love that. So you gift yourself the time of getting to know you and what's meaningful to you, and that's the self that you're bringing when
Exactly.
you're breaking bread with others.
And because it's really timely and relevant to you, then you're going to communicate it in a way that transmits that. And that's a gift to everyone.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Shari Foos,
Thank
for
you.
joining me. Where can people learn more about you and your library dinners and the narrative method and everything?
So if you'll go to thenarrativemethod.org, you can, first of all, go to the calendar page and sign up for as many salons as you want. They're free. We also have special interviews, special events, series. And if you want to do a private event or a really cool, unique thing, give us a call or text us, email us at thenarrativemethod.info, and we will get back to you ASAP.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for sharing this love of food and community. Thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and or your favorite podcast platform. And you can go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to get recipes that go with the conversation. So we're all gonna want to play Pac-Man while making this wonderful cake recipe, and also read the articles that go with each episode. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Go have conversations, make connections, because that's really what life and eating is all about. Until next time, bon appetit.